Why do city council meetings go into executive session so often? These are secret. How do you feel about executive sessions on a regular basis?
I don't like them. I can tell you this, I've never called one. I've never called an executive session.
I think we did away with citizen comments yesterday, so I'm going to move back into executive session. So we will now recess into and conduct an executive session pursuant to sections 551.071 and 551.087 of the Texas Government Code to seek the advice of the city attorneys regarding pending or contemplated litigation and or to deliberate regarding economic development negotiations. So we'll now recess. It's 9:03. We will now recess into convene an executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code sections 551.071 and 087 of the Texas Government Code to seek the advice of the city attorney and or to discuss economic development negotiations. Additionally, .074 of the Texas Government Code to seek the advice of the city attorneys and or to discuss the appointment of the associate municipal court judges. So if I can have council indulgence on, we're going to take an item out of order, which is going to be our executive session, which is item 11A. So with that, bring some script here. So we'll now recess and convene an executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code sections 551.071 and 087 of the Texas Government Code to seek the advice of the city attorneys and or discuss economic development negotiations. So it is now 6:56 and we'll go in executive session. All right, so being with that, we will now move on to our next item, which is executive session. So we will now recess into and convene an executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code sections 551.071 and .087 to the Texas Government Code to seek the advice of the city attorney and or to discuss economic development negotiations. So it is now 7:19, and now we will go into recess. All right, so with that, we will now recess into and convene an executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code sections 551.071, 072, 074, and 087 of the Texas Government Code to seek the advice of city attorneys to deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, discuss personnel matters, and or to deliberate regarding economic development negotiations. So the time is 7:32. All right. So we will now recess and convene an executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code section 55.071 and .072 and probably even .087 of Texas Government Code to seek the advice of the city attorney to deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property and or to deliberate regarding economic development negotiations. So we will now recess in executive session. So we will now recess and convene an executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code sections 551.071 and .087 of the Texas Government Code to seek the advice of the city attorney and or to discuss economic development negotiations. So we will recess and convene an executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code sections 551.071 to seek the advice of city attorneys, section 551.087 to discuss economic development negotiations, and section 551.074 to discuss personal matters regarding the associate municipal court judge. So 7:46. And convene an executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code sections 551.071 to seek the advice of city attorneys regarding pending or contemplated litigation and or 551.072 to deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property and or 551.087 to deliberate regarding economic development negotiations. So council will now go into executive session. We have our one of our last items, so item 8A. We will now recess into and convene an executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code sections 551.071 to seek the advice of city attorneys regarding pending or contemplated litigation and or 551.087 to deliberate regarding economic development negotiations. It is 7:50. We are now in recess.